The night was thick with smoke, and the streets of Minsk trembled beneath the roar of armored vehicles. For decades, President Alexander Lukashenko had ruled Belarus with an iron fist, a man feared by enemies and worshipped by the loyal. But tonight the fear had shifted. It was no longer the people who trembled. It was the ruler himself. Inside the marble halls of the presidential palace, Lukashenko's most trusted generals were missing. Phones rang unanswered, orders were ignored. Somewhere, deep inside the military headquarters, the seeds of rebellion had finally erupted. The generals, once symbols of loyalty, had turned their backs on their commander. For years, they had stood beside him in every crisis, suppressing protests, silencing voices, enforcing his rule. But now they whispered a single dangerous word: enough. Outside, the city of Minsk was divided. Loyalist forces tried to hold key intersections while rebel troops advanced through the industrial districts. The flag of the old Belarusian Republic, once banned by Lukashenko, began to appear again on the streets. Young soldiers, uncertain of which side to choose, watched their commanding officers abandon the regime. The rebellion wasn't just military, it was psychological. Decades of oppression had created cracks that no amount of propaganda could repair. Lukashenko sat in his office, surrounded by maps and radios, barking orders that no one followed. His face, once firm and confident, now showed fear. The man who called himself the last dictator of Europe was realizing the truth. His era was ending, not from an external invasion, but from betrayal inside his own fortress. Reports flooded in from across the country. In Brest, the 5th Armored Division refused to deploy. In Hrodna, the Air Force Base declared neutrality. In Vitebsk, an entire infantry regiment joined the rebellion, seizing control of communication towers. State television tried to present calm, broadcasting old footage of Lukashenko visiting soldiers. But everyone knew it was a lie. Social media exploded with live streams of burning vehicles, soldiers changing sides, and civilians cheering as convoys of rebel tanks rolled into the capital. Across the border, Moscow watched closely. For years, Putin had kept Lukashenko afloat, financially, militarily, politically, but this time even the Kremlin was silent. Russian analysts debated, should Moscow intervene or let Belarus fall into chaos? For the first time, Lukashenko called Moscow, directly demanding help. The line stayed cold. There was no response. Inside Belarus, the generals held a secret meeting. The air was thick with tension. Major General Ivanov, the commander of the elite 103rd Airborne Brigade, stood at the head of the table. "We have fought for this country, not for one man," he said. "Lukashenko has lost the people, and he has lost us." No one disagreed. They all knew what had to be done. The operation was swift. At dawn, rebel forces stormed the presidential compound. Gunfire echoed across the square. Helicopters circled overhead. Loyalist guards fought desperately, but the outcome was clear. Within hours, the palace was surrounded. Smoke rose into the pale morning sky. Lukashenko tried to escape through an underground passage, but he was intercepted by his own bodyguards, who had already switched sides. As he was taken into custody, the sound of distant cheering filled the air. The man who once demanded absolute obedience was now a prisoner of the same system he built. On the streets, chaos turned into celebration. Civilians flooded Independence Square, waving flags, chanting freedom slogans that had been forbidden for years. Some cried, others laughed, but everyone felt the same thing: relief. A new chapter had begun. The Interim Military Council announced on national television, "The era of tyranny is over. The Belarusian armed forces stand with the people." It was a statement that echoed through every home, every factory, every barracks. Around the world, leaders reacted with shock. In Washington, the U.S. State Department called for calm and free elections. In Brussels, the European Union promised support for a democratic transition. In Moscow, silence turned to anger. Russian media called the rebellion a Western-backed coup. Troops near the border were put on alert, but even Putin knew that invading Belarus now would mean facing a population united for the first time in decades. As the sun set over Minsk that evening, the city glowed with firelight, not from destruction, but from celebration. People lit torches, sang songs, and honored the soldiers who refused to shoot their own citizens. The generals, now hailed as heroes, addressed the nation. General Ivanov stood before the cameras, his uniform stained with dust and smoke. "We are not traitors," he said. "We are patriots who could no longer watch our country bleed. Belarus belongs to its people." His words spread like wildfire. In the following days, statues of Lukashenko were toppled. His portraits were torn from walls. The once terrifying security agency, the KGB of Belarus, was dismantled. Political prisoners walked free, blinking into the sunlight after years in darkness. The sound of freedom was strange but beautiful. Yet beneath the joy lay uncertainty. Who would lead now? Would democracy truly take root? Or would another strong man emerge from the ashes? Foreign powers circled like vultures, each eager to shape the new Belarus for their own gain. The United States offered aid. Russia hinted at retaliation. The European Union sent diplomats, hoping to stabilize the fragile revolution. But amid the noise, one truth remained. The people of Belarus had reclaimed their voice. The generals who once feared Lukashenko now feared the people instead, knowing that any future betrayal would not be forgiven. The fall of Lukashenko became a symbol across Eastern Europe. Protesters in other countries whispered, "If Belarus can rise, so can we." Ripples spread far beyond its borders. For the first time, the world saw a dictatorship fall not by foreign invasion or political maneuvering, but by the conscience of its own army. Days later, Lukashenko appeared in a brief, shaky video from custody. His face was pale, his voice trembling. "I did what I thought was right for Belarus," he said. "History will judge me." The video went viral, but few felt pity. The man who once ruled through fear now begged for understanding. In the following weeks, the interim council began to rebuild. New elections were promised. The old symbols of oppression were erased. The capital, once filled with propaganda posters, now displayed murals of unity and hope. International journalists flooded the city, calling it the second fall of the Iron Curtain. But in the quiet corners of Minsk, some people still feared the future. Could this freedom last, or would history repeat itself as it had so many times before? For now, no one cared. The night of fear was over. The dawn of courage had arrived. The rebellion of the Belarusian generals was more than a coup, it was a reckoning. It proved that even the most loyal soldiers can turn when loyalty becomes slavery, and that even the mightiest ruler can crumble when truth finds its voice. Across the rooftops of Minsk, the wind carried a new sound, the sound of people breathing freely, for the first time in a generation. And as the sun rose over a liberated Belarus, one phrase echoed through the air, whispered from soldier to citizen, from mother to child, freedom has come home.